Welcome to This Team is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Demetri and Lauren. What is killing me this week is reports from OTAs, because they don't really mean much of anything, right? Because who is going to say anything negative about what they're seeing out of OTAs? But also, there seems to be a lot of content being generated out of coaches, teammates, saying a whole lot of nothing right now. I can't remember the name of the special teams coach, but he was asked to update the battle for kicker, and basically he just listed guys' measurables, and that was his update. Well, you know, this guy is taller than this guy.
Honestly, that's such relatable, that hits to me as someone who covered football for a long time, right, even collegiately. Because let me tell you, the grind of covering like training camp,
for sure,
on it, not just like on a day in, day out basis, but on like a year in, year out basis. Because you just start to become more and more cynical as the years go on. And you're just like, I am just like transcribing this bullshit. And making it into like some sort of a pie, but it's not really pie. It's just like, it's nothing of substance. It won't feed you. Why are we all going through this exercise? You know, and I wish I should have done it. At one point I wanted to make like a training camp bingo card.
Right.
Of like, you know, this guy's in the best shape of his life. This guy came in with a new attitude. This coach is really going to make us exotic blitzers, blah, 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 blah. Like, it was just this vast array of crap. You know,
I will say one thing that you have heard a lot, which I am interested in only because of the history, is that the receiver or the rookie receiver putting on the real show is Jimmy Horn Jr., which, you know, on the one hand, like, of course, he's the last pick of the team's draft. Of course, he's got to show out in a way that Teteroa McMillan doesn't, right? But we did hear the same thing about Jalen Coker last year, and we kind of dismissed it. And all of a sudden, look at who ended up being the best rookie wide receiver on the team last year. So I don't want to dismiss that specific thing, but there is a whole lot of, oh, well, you don't know what we're going to do with Trevor Etienne this year, or you don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah, me neither. So why'd you draft him?
Right. Excuse me as I choke on my own spit. There's a whole lot of, I don't want to say nothing because I get why these things matter, but the reports I don't think are super worth paying attention to, which by the way, like we were just talking about this before we started recording. Like, it is the off season right now. You can't turn nothing into something every single week. So our recording schedule is going to be a little bit off and on through the off season, probably every other week. Maybe there's some weeks you'll get two. I don't know. But anyway, just wanted to tell you guys that up top. Lauren Brownlow, let's talk about Ben Solak from ESPN and his, I think, lofty expectations for the Carolina Panthers. He is putting his name on it, saying that he thinks this is going to be a 9-8 team at the end of the season.
Oh God, please stop. No.
All right.
Don't look at us. I'm
going to add a caveat to this that I think is going to make you, well, I don't know. I think it's going to make you more nervous, but I could be wrong. Solak in his write-up says, like, very upfront, he is not a believer in Bryce Young, but he is an over-believer in all of the pieces that have been added around Bryce Young this year.
Okay. Isn't he a Pats guy by background?
Oh, is he? I don't know.
Be wrong. I'm not sure, but either way, I was like, he should know above everyone else. Like, if you don't think the quarterback is good,
right? Like,
maybe he thinks he's good enough. I don't know. Maybe that's what he means by that. But like, if you think the quarterback is like going to regress to old Bryce, essentially, like the pieces don't matter.
Yeah, if he regresses to old Bryce, like forget it. It's over. Like this team is completely back to the drawing board.
Physically, Andy Dalton, bless him, I do not believe has it in him to maintain a full season of high quality play. So like, if you think Bryce isn't it, why are you saying they're going to win 9 games? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
I guess when you say not a believer, I guess you don't. I mean, this is just me putting words in Solak's mouth. I'm not like, I wonder if it is he does not believe in the high highs. He believes that the reality is somewhere in the middle of what we saw at the end of last year and all of 2023.
Yeah.
That would be my guess.
You know what's crazy to me is I don't really feel like we've seen much middle with Bryce.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely.
And maybe that's like what he means. Like maybe he thinks this will like level out, or, you know, and fair if he thinks that. But even if it just like levels out, like, and that is worth questioning, because we've talked about this all offseason, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this offense has to operate at an extremely high level all the time for this team to have a chance to win that many games. This team will have to be constantly. So like in that way, if you want to say like you're not a believer in Bryce's ability to do that for a full NFL season, I actually understand where he would be coming from on that. But if you want to say like he's just going to regress to the mean and they're still going to win 9 games, I'm not seeing that. I do not see how that's possible, to be honest.
So let me ask you this then, okay? If what we're saying is that the key to this team achieving at its absolute highest level, not even saying you and I believe that's what the highest level is, but the key to this team achieving its absolute highest level is in some respect what we saw from Bryce at his peak being the real Bryce in the NFL. Could you make the case then that this is the quarterback going into the season with the most pressure in the league? And if so, how does that bode for Bryce, honestly?
That's tough because there are a lot of quarterbacks under, I'm sure.
I agree. Okay, so
contract-wise and elsewhere, you know.
Yeah, so pressure may not be the right word for it, but certainly if you look at the quarterback situations that I think the general NFL public would say are in question, the Panthers are the only one that have a quarterback right now that still get listed in that conversation, right? Like the others are the Steelers or the Saints, you know, teams that may not have their starting quarterback for week 1 on their roster right now.
I think, like, I will say this. I think that he is probably the quarterback that is being questioned that has the most on the line in terms of his actual play, determining like what the team is capable of, if that makes sense.
It does.
So like, because like the Saints, I mean, what's their ceiling really, you know, at this point with that roster, even with like a good quarterback? I don't know. And
no, I agree.
Steelers, same thing. Like, how much does that change things when they also have like 8 quarterbacks, I feel like, already. So it's whatever. they'll do some they'll just spin the wheel and find a new one from week to week or whatever. But like, I think that Bryce is the one that is still like not solidified, like you said, you know, still listed in that questionable column, that has the most on his shoulders, I would say, in that way, like in terms of whether or not this team wins football games. Like his play and the offense's play as a whole, not just his, but like his play will determine, I think, a lot more of what happens with those, because those teams have like, the Saints are bad all around for one, and then like the Steelers, I'm sure, have a better defense, because who doesn't? So
I mean, if you're the Steelers and you go out and you trade for DK Metcalf and you still get to June 1st and don't have, you know, if we all believe it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, he's still not under contract. Like, it seems to me that you probably have some buyer's remorse on that DK Metcalf deal. Like, I don't know why you're doing that. Right. If you don't have your quarterback. Speaking of receivers, like Ben Solak, there's something he definitively says and something I wonder if he's assuming. He definitively says he thinks the Panthers have solved the wide receiver issue. And we're going to talk more about the Panthers receiving core in a little bit more depth later on in the show. But I wonder, him saying he believes they have solved the wide receiver issue or the wide receiver 1 issue, does that mean he has no questions about the offensive line carrying its improvement over from one year to the next? I don't think I do, but also what we saw in 2023, Lauren, was like awful. And they didn't do a lot to ensure the edges where, you know, the Panthers had the most trouble keeping Bryce upright in his rookie season. I guess the offensive line to me is always going to be a question until the end of the season. You can look back and go, oh, it wasn't so bad.
Yeah, I get that. I think like I certainly feel better about wide receiver at this point, way better than I do about but the offensive line is always going to make me a little nervous. And you know, watching the way Icky played 2 years ago makes me a little nervous too. And you hope that those, you know, I call it the yips, I don't know what else to call it, but you hope that that's not still inside some of those guys. You hope that guys could stay healthy and people can be where they need to be on the offensive line, because I think that was a big key to last year too. I mean, I think they have some nice depth there. I don't think it's like a finished product by any means, but at the same time, I think that it's in a lot better shape than it was 2 years ago, like overall, in terms of how people are playing and where like the roles that people have sort of settled into as opposed to 2 years ago. I think it is still in a lot better shape, but I totally get what you're saying. And like, and certainly this is a much better run blocking line than pass blocking line. And so that's worth keeping an eye on as well, because this team can't afford to like run the ball and get stuffed. And
no, I mean, look, I think Chuba had a breakthrough last year. I think Dowdle is a really good, especially if you're having that dude as your number 2 running back. Like, that's great. If Etienne plays some this year and can provide you at least a little bit of the receiving threat out of the backfield that they were counting on Jonathan Brooks to be, okay, good. Like, you've got a core in place there. You know, at the end of the day, this is the NFL, and you move the ball downfield in chunks sometimes. Yes. And, you know, buying your quarterback time is going to be a big part of that.
Well, and look, no matter how good your run game is, if that's all you have, they will stop you.
Absolutely.
Like, we even saw that with the Eagles. Like, when people were talking about that, I mean, and that was one of the better run games we've ever seen. Like, Jalen Hurts still had to make plays for that to work, or else it wasn't going to work. And everybody was saying that all season long. And eventually, you know, and he was able to do that. And thus, you know, they won the Super Bowl. But like, you have to have that. You have to at least have the threat of that, or else like they're going to stop it. They'll just load up the box and you're done.
So, Lauren, let's project forward and make you even more uncomfortable. If 9-8 is what we are talking about as a possibility, could we go a step forward and look at the division as a whole and say it's not crazy to think 9-8 or even up to 10-7 is going to win this division or could win this division?
Right. No, I would agree with that. Yeah.
I
don't think that's crazy at all. No.
The Saints are like bad, right? The Falcons are, look, they're going to be, and I know the Panthers to a certain extent also are going to be relying on 2 rookie pass rushers. The Falcons literally used 2 first-round picks. Like, they have no excuse not to start those 2 guys that they drafted in round 1 on their edges. Does that solve their problem? I don't know. Tampa Bay, I saw this the other day, Lauren. I saw, I can't remember who it is. One of the writers, I think, at Pro Football Focus was making the case that Tampa could be or should have the number 2 odds to win the NFC after Philadelphia. But
what?
I wonder, are you going to strike gold 2 years in a row, replacing an offensive coordinator that got a head coaching job? That's one. And the other is, we are intimately familiar with the Panthers' issues at safety and in the secondary. Do you realize Tampa has kind of the same issues? I mean, it's glossed over a bit because Antoine Winfield Jr. is so good, but Antoine Winfield Jr. has missed a lot of games.
I don't know why it annoys me the most when it's guys that I was old enough to see their dads play.
Right.
And I'm like, God, why is this good player, son of an NFL guy on our team?
Yeah, especially when it is his dad's name, Junior. No, I agree with you completely. It is very uncomfortable to realize you are that old. But yeah, I mean, the Buccaneers have to, I think they have the issue we have at safety at corner, but also their star in the secondary, just like our star in the secondary, hasn't been there a lot of the time. So I think the division is very vulnerable. And the other part of this is, do you believe that it's doable for the Panthers? Like, at the end of the day, the division's going to be, the rest of the 3 are going to be the 3. Can the Panthers put together a roster that you could envision walking out of 2025 with a winning record?
Okay. And like I said, we've talked about this. Theoretically, yes, of course.
Right.
Theoretically. But when it comes to the division stuff, that's where my stomach starts turning. Because, like, first of all, I don't like the way the games are scheduled this year in the division. I don't like that, like, most of them are towards the end of the year.
Last year, the Buccaneers, just like this coming season, we didn't get the Buccaneers till much later in the season, but this year it seems egregiously spaced, right?
Yes, like there's there's one like 3-week stretch where they play one division team. I don't remember if it's the Bucks or the Falcons, but they play them with like a 1 week break in between, and then they play them again.
It's the Buccaneers, because the
Yeah.
Falcons are the only division team they play at all in the first, I want to say 7 or 8 weeks of the season. Like, it's bananas.
Yes, and so I don't like that. I mean, just I don't like that it's all grouped together like that. And those games do end up determining a lot, and so I don't love that. And like I've said a million times, I was saying this to someone the other day. I was talking to a mutual friend of ours, actually, and a listener to this podcast, Richard. Yes, I was talking to him about it, and I was like, look, the division stinks. However, how many times has this team lost to stink? Like, the more you talk about the Saints, the more I want to stop you and just be like, please don't do this, because I know they're going to lose to them once. I have it it is etched in my brain now. It's living there rent free. Now I am sure they will lose to them once for no reason, no discernible reason.
I mean, it's funny, right? You look at the other 3 teams in the division. I'm sure they would look at the Panthers too and say, yeah, every single one of them has a dude on the offense that you think, okay, my question is that guy really going to do what people say he can? Maybe for fans of other teams looking at the Panthers, maybe it is as simple as, is Teteroa McMillan really the problem solver at the X receiver position that people say is? I don't know. To me, like, is Bijan Robinson really going to have that breakthrough year in Atlanta? What can Chris Olave do in New Orleans if Tyler Shuck or Spencer Rattler are his quarterback? Like, I just don't know what the reality there is. And as you know, as I've said on this podcast before, Baker Mayfield becoming the quarterback of the Buccaneers is what made it easy for me to give up Buccaneers fandom, because I don't believe you are really dedicated to winning if Baker Mayfield is your quarterback. But at the same time,
it's like hiring Bill Belichick as your college football.
Yeah, kind of, because like, yeah, I get it. He could do the job, but you're also sort of like telling the fan base you're very comfortable picking, going 500 and picking in the teens in the draft. And it's also like, better.
Yeah, what's the long-term plan here?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting as we go forward, and especially as we get closer and more of the, like, you know, the headliner NFL analyst type start analyzing this division and seeing what is possible for Carolina, because I'd believe anything.
Let's be real. I'm not the first person to say this, so I'm not going to pretend as if I am, but it's the NFC Coastal, okay? And if you know, people out there,
yeah.
Like, if y'all remember the ACC Coastal, y'all are my people. If you remember it fondly, okay? It's a little hard because I have an emotional investment.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Coastal, I just was enjoying it like as a media member and not as an invested fan. I can tell you, any team could literally win that division. And a lot of teams in it are going to be like, how did we lose this division when it was right there for the taking the whole time? And we couldn't get our stuff together to do it. And we lost this dumb game to the Saints / Boston, whoever,
Right. Is the AFC South their Coastal? I mean, I think they have a team that is head and shoulders above everybody else in Houston, but I see a lot of people that kind of think that the Jaguars might close that gap this year.
I think that might actually be the better analogy, because like, as much crap as the Coastal took, usually I would say a team came out of it that was at least as good relative to the rest of the league as like a Houston. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm trying to think, like, did the Coastal, I can only think of one time that the Coastal produced a truly embarrassing participant in the ACC championship game. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's better, but the two Souths I can think combined,
of more than one time, but one of those times the coach took like a 7-6 team. I think that was the year Georgia Tech beat.
Yes, yeah,
one of the SEC schools in the bowl game.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of. And when I said truly embarrassing, I just meant record wise. I didn't mean talent on the field.
Yeah, they were like under 500.
Yeah, but I will say, Lauren, perhaps, the state of the AFC and NFC South is a good case for the NFL does not belong in the southeastern part of the United States.
Oh my God. Come on. I don't know about all that. I was like, wait, this sounds like a hockey. This is like a hockey.
Right. That's that's right. I am a Canadian football traditionalist.
Yes, exactly. This football belongs where it's cold.
Oh God, don't. the worst take ever, right?
I hate that take.
Yeah. Because I've been to football to play or to watch football where it's cold. You know what I did? Left at halftime.
You
Like
know what?
most
And
people at that game.
I will say this: there are places where it's probably too hot to play football, like Columbia, South Carolina. No offense.
Have you been?
those
You have been.
young
I'm
folks.
positive you've been to a Dolphins game, right? Down in Miami.
Yeah, but it's been a while. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but
pretty. It gets pretty hot there, obviously.
It's been like 25 years. We went for a buddy of mine who's a huge Dolphins fan. We went for his bachelor party, and like I got sunburnt to the point that like the top of my head was black. You know, I mean, like,
and the humidity when you pass like a certain point in South Carolina, the humidity all the way down the coast is just like on a level that is unfathomable, even to us here that we like live it. It's different. It is just different. Like I went to one football game in Columbia. I was like, I will never do this again unless I literally am forced to.
Being from that part of the South, I always forget how much more tolerable it is here until I have to go back to Alabama. Because,
yeah,
it's not like there's no humidity here. There is humidity, but like once you step into that, it's pretty awful.
It's a shorter time span where it's awful here, for one thing.
Yeah.
And it's not, even when it's at its worst, it's not as bad as it is there. I've never felt like that in my life as I did that day. And I was like, this is hell on earth. I am in hell. I have been punished. I am like, it is that bad. And so, yeah, I would agree. Like, so to me, I do agree with the too cold thing. And I'm like, put a roof on your stadium, you snowy people. Like, why is it snowing in April or in November? Like, you guys are, because I even looked it up. I Googled it to see, like, does it snow in Green Bay in November? Because that's when the Panthers are going. And they're like, yeah, it can. And I'm like, God.
Shout out Saints and Falcons who got it right. It can be sometimes too hot to the point that you need a dome, or too unpleasant.
Oh, and certainly in New Orleans it is.
Oh,
so
the worst. Plus, the whole place smells like hobo urine. Before we go any further,
hey, I like New Orleans, the city. I just don't like Saints fans.
Respectfully, it's because you did not grow up down there. The Sports Podcast Festival returns to the Rialto on August 23rd. Lauren will be there. I will be there. Ovius and Gilio will be there. So will Split Zone Duo and Big Screen Sports. It is going to be an absolute blast. Get your tickets right now at therialto.com or etix.com. This is our college football tradition for week 0, August 23rd at the Rialto. 3 shows for 1 ticket. Get it right now at therialto.com or etix.com. Lauren, I want to dive into some of the wide receiver talk about this team because you wrote a great piece for OG fans about sort of contextualizing how, I don't want to say unprecedented, but I did not realize how rare a position XL had been put in last year by being only the 4th wide receiver the Panthers have ever taken in round 1 and only the 3rd taken in round 1 not to commit murder. That is very, very small group of wide receivers, but it does contextualize. Also, by the way, it should be pointed out, probably the only first-round wide receiver, I guess the first-round wide receiver coming into the worst quarterback situation at the beginning of the year, right?
Yes. 100%.
So I want to let you talk a little bit about that article before we go any further, because I have noticed some of the talk this week about what Teteroa McMillan brings to the team. Maybe it's because I just read your article, but yesterday and this morning, it was hard not to read it in the context of what XL could not do last year.
Well, what got me on that track was actually, I saw like the video of him at the Canes game, at the Hurricanes game of Xavier at the Hurricane. And he's just like in every setting. He's just so delightful that we see him in at the Derby, at Canes game, experiencing German food. I just adore him.
Have you seen the video from the Derby where he goes up to Guy Fieri and tells him he wants to teach him to cook raccoon? And Guy Fieri gives him this whole dissertation on the various ways raccoon has been served to him.
That's incredible.
It's a great video.
And he's just, I love him. So I do love him like so much. And I've said on this podcast, I'm like, let me love you on the field.
Yeah.
And I wanted to like, look at, I'm in therapy. You want to unpack your trauma. You want to really take a look at it and go, what is this rooted in? And you want to examine like your fears and go, what's the factual information to back this up. Like, what's reality? I know what I'm afraid of. I know what my anxieties are, but what's reality here? So that's kind of why I wanted to like look at that and look at my receiver drama. And because in my mind, there's just this endless parade of Panthers wide receivers drafted in the first 3 rounds that everybody was like, oh, that's going to be the dude. We got this guy from USC. We got this guy from LSU. Oh, he's going to be great. He's really fast, blah, blah, blah. And then he has like stone hands or just ends up just whatever. Just something happens.
Well,
some disaster.
You pointed out in your piece, and listen, the guy that I fell for as like, oh, okay, I think the Panthers got a dude was Kelvin Benjamin. And
yeah, well, same.
I mean, like, he had a year where he looked like that. Then all of a sudden that was over.
And I think, like, for me, that's the hard part is, like, a lot of the receivers they've drafted. It's not like I've looked at them except, and I left Armonte Edwards out of this list because it was 13 guys I counted in the first 3 rounds in franchise history, which also stunned me because this has always been a huge position of need for them.
Wait a minute, Lord, does that mean in the last 3 years they've taken the majority of those guys? Yeah, because it feels like they've taken, if not the first and maybe the second in the last 4
and that's why it was like such I don't know if you remember, but it was like a huge deal when they took Kelvin. Like people were freaking out. Like they were like, this is awesome. Even though it was like I think it was like 28,
right?
Yeah, it was in the 20s. I was going to say 20 something. And like that people were freaking out. It was a big deal because it was like, okay, like they're addressing this. It has been a constant source of frustration. And like, look, it's not like the Panthers have like drafted poorly during those times necessarily. I mean, they've had some really good drafts. They had some bad ones too. I've written about those, but like they've had some really good drafts and they've addressed a lot of needs that they have, but they haven't, whether it's the coaching staff in place or whoever, they just haven't always prioritized wide receiver as much. It's certainly not enough to draft in the first round. And I've just sat there feeling sick at times, like looking at these dudes that they could have had and just being like, God, why didn't we have him? Like, we could have had him, and instead we got this safety that's already off the team or whoever it is. You know what I mean?
Well,
and so like that, but you get nervous because you get excited about all of them is what I was going to say. You get excited and you think they're going to be good, and then they end up not being good. So that's, I think, where some of my trauma comes from with,
I think some of the Panthers' historic unwillingness to address wide receiver in the first round until recently has to be a little bit about the coaches, right? Like Seifert was certainly on the downside of his career when he came here, but until
just skip Seifert because
but here's the thing: until Frank Reich, who also you could just skip, until Frank Reich and now Dave Canales, like that was their last offensive-minded head coach, right?
Yes.
It wasn't. Fox was a DC.
Capers was their first coach, defensive coordinator. John Fox, defense.
Yep.
Correct. Ron Rivera,
Yeah, Ron Rivera. It's been a largely defensive-minded thing. I do, before we get into what is being said about Tet and what that then says about XL, I did find a stat that I found really interesting. Do you realize that last year, targeting XL, whether he made the catch or not, targeting XL actually made Bryce appreciably better in terms of quarterback rating last year. His quarterback rating overall was around a 79, 80. When he was targeting XL, throws to XL, he had a passer rating of 89.4. So I would say, imagine if XL could eliminate the drops, or if XL could come along even just a little bit. In terms of production, Pro Football Focus had him ranked rightfully 92nd out of 98 eligible wide receivers. So look, if you could just get that up to the low 70s, you're making a major difference in the outcome of your quarterback.
I wanted to it allowed me to sort of like reframe Xavier because I actually, it inspired me because I was reading a piece about him and how positive, like Bryce praising him for how positive he's been throughout all of this and how he's still such a positive force in that locker room for everybody and just lifts everybody up, and the way he just keeps working and the way he's the first one to encourage Teteroa, like when he makes a big catch and stuff like that. Like, how do you not love that? Honestly, and it kind of led me to just like almost get to a place with him where I was with Bryce a little bit, where I was like, look, maybe he won't be good. I don't know. But I'll be really happy for him if he is. And just kind of let go a little bit. And I think having Teteroa around, if nothing else, I think it just takes some pressure off of him.
Well, I think that last year between the emergence of Coker, between honestly bringing in Deontay Johnson at the very beginning of the year, XL always seems like a positive locker room presence. So don't mistake what I'm saying here. I think he was always going to be a good locker room guy, a fun
Yes.
character to have on this team, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think, like, from the get-go last year, his targets from what they were at South Carolina fell off in a huge way, and that can either be humbling or it can be tone setting for you. And XL seems to have the attitude that it's tone setting. Right now, he is a 4 to 5 targets a game kind of guy, and that means there is room for Teteroa McMillan to come in and also thrive. There is room for Hunter Renfrow to come in and get the targets he needs to see if he can make this roster or not. Like, it just seems to me that XL did a really good job of accepting what reality is. Doesn't mean he accepts that's what it's going to be forever, but accepting what reality is in the place where he is working from right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think, like, it's got to be, like I said, it takes some pressure off having Teteroa there, because Teteroa's a higher draft pick than him too.
Yep.
So, like, you automatically have that. And then also I was reading too, and I don't know how much. I knew he had at least one nagging injury. I don't think I knew about the wrist thing, or at least I didn't retain that knowledge. And so that's gotta, I mean, that gives me a little grace for his catching as well. For his ability, because
you never really know what to make of camp injuries, but he did have an ankle thing that held him out of camp last year for 2 weeks, I think. Or at least held him out of contact.
It was the ankle and the wrist, I believe, were like the two things that were, but the wrist in particular, like, that's obviously kind of important for guys that are catching the football. And so, like, for me, I was like, okay, like, I'm going to give him a little grace. And so I feel like for me, even with Xavier, as much as I love him off the field, like, I would feel this rage rise up in my heart when he would drop a very easy catch, like, at least, easy for me to say, right? But, like, in a very easy football, like, I'm like,
look, as somebody that had so much experience watching him and creating content about him while he was in the SEC and seeing him make those catches and turn them into big run after catch plays, like, I was right there with you. It was frustrating because I'd seen him complete the play before, and you always hate to see that. I had this feeling with Bryce. I've had this feeling with a lot of guys that I thought coming out of college would just translate perfectly Kelvin to the NFL. Were they so relying on the difference in talent between them and the other guy at the last level that they were not prepared for the step up? I think that is true with Bryce. I don't know that is necessarily true.
I agree
with XL.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think he just had a lot of things that I think it was a lot. Well, he does have one similarity with Bryce, and then I think a lot of it was mental when he had issues. It was just, he was in his head a little bit, and
I would imagine even changing the coaches completely. There was probably still a black cloud. Call it toxicity if you want it. I think of it more like Eeyore's black cloud over the locker room at the start of training camp last year.
And that's got to be hard on a guy that wants to thrive in, like, positivity, like, as much as he does. But I just, like, what I love about him is, like, a lot of wide receivers would be sulky right now, and we would be like, we get it. You know what I mean? Like, we would be like, yeah, I would be too, or whatever. But he's turned it into a positive. Like, he has taken something crappy that has happened to him on paper and then just said, I'm going to make this into the best possible thing for me that I can. I think that's really admirable. And instead of being mad at him if he drops a football, I'm going to be sad, or, like, because of what it's done to my team. I'm just going to be sad for him and hope that he can make the next play. And that's healing for me. So thank you, Xavier, for allowing me to free myself there.
It's been interesting. You mentioned the fun off the field that he has had this offseason, where he has been front and center locally at the Canes, nationally at the Kentucky Derby.
I love that.
Oh, me too. But at the same time, it's been really interesting because literally since the day Teteroa McMillan got drafted, there have been so many profiles of the guy's work ethic, of his relationship with Bryce Young, of how big of a fan Bryce Young was of him before they even played together, that I wondered how much of it was weighing on XL. But this week, I noticed a couple things, and they were in Joe Person's piece at the Athletic.
That's what I read, is the one about Xavier on the Athletic. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, have you seen the one about Teteroa McMillan that came out today on the Athletic?
Oh, no, not yet.
So,
no,
okay. So there are a couple of quotes in here. First of all, also a story that came out yesterday. That would be Sunday the 1st. On the Panthers website. Do you realize the Panthers came close to trading out of number 8 because the Rams wanted Teteroa McMillan? And how close it got, Dan Morgan makes it sound like it did not come particularly close, but the Panthers basically said if the Rams wanted to come up from 24-8, they wanted a quote boatload of picks. And so you got to imagine that's 24. That's probably next year's one. That's probably
maybe
at least
2 years, maybe the next 2 years one as well.
Yeah, I mean, either the next 2 years one, or I mean, what if it is a one? You already had their two this year. What if it is this year's one, this year's three, next year's one, and next year's three, or next year's two? Even like there was probably such a big asking price that like Dan Morgan makes it sound like, or at least he says outright, he was relieved when the Rams said no. So it had to be because they were so sold on McMillan being the guy that they needed. I mean, it sounds like exactly what it probably was. Like you had to have a package coming back that if you were going to lose out on Teteroa McMillan, you could still sleep comfortably at night knowing you were going to be okay for a while.
He's probably, I believe him about that, like being relieved, but at the same time, there has to be, I would feel at least some measure as a fan, even of like, not vindication because it's not against the Bears, but like it would be like, okay, cool.
But now it would be like a restocking the shelves kind of thing, right?
Well, and it's like a fleecing the other way. It's like, and look, good for you, Dan. Know your worth, sweetie. Okay, let's know our worth. Let's not devalue ourselves. You're okay. You want that pick? You better give me like a bunch of stuff. And the Rams were like, no. And he was like, cool. Then we're gonna take the pick and we're gonna get your guy. Yeah. So whatever. Either way, we're good.
So here's what is said about Teteroa McMillan in that athletic piece. This is what Bryce Young had to say in describing him. Super smooth, has supernatural hands, great catch radius, super quarterback friendly, which is always nice. The wide receivers coach, whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head, praised Teteroa McMillan by saying he makes no false steps, no bad steps, and we have a true hands catcher.
Don't tease me with a good time.
I don't want to say that, well, obviously they are comparing one to the other, but especially the no false steps, the true hands catcher, that does sound like you are specifically talking about some of the problems that XL had last year. Like we saw him drop balls because they hit him in the chest and he did not close them in quickly. We saw him not be where he was supposed to be on timing routes for both Bryce and for Andy Dalton. Like I said, I don't think it was intended that way. It's just hard not to compare and contrast what we saw last year in XL's rookie season to the hype around Teteroa McMillan going into his.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I wanted to look up his name because I think he deserves credit. Whereas like some of the Panthers coaches, you could take or leave in terms of that. But considering what he was able to do last year with guys like Coker and whoever else, it's Rob Moore is their wide receivers coach. So I just think he deserves a shout out. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I didn't like, I know you're not saying that it was like a shot at Xavier or anything about the hands thing. I think, but it's obviously like at this point, just factually, it's sort of a need.
I mean, it could be a shot, right? Like you don't mean it as a shot, but if you are XL and you know what your problems were last year, it's probably hard not to take it as like they're talking about me.
I get the feeling, and I don't mean this to be dismissive towards him at all, but I don't think I don't see how you could be this positive about life in general, and certainly the sport of football, if you're reading that deeply into everything. And so I would imagine even if he saw that quote, I think he would be like, if he's not offended about the drafting of the guy in the first place and is like in practice hyping him up and everything, I doubt that he's going to be like, wait, he's saying he has great hands? That's a shot at me.
You don't think there could be a little bit of Kelvin Gemstone in him of very flashy in front of the cameras, but very sad away from them?
Oh, God, no, not Kelvin. Oh, well, the thing about Kelvin though is that like a lot of what he was doing for the cameras was not rooted, at least for most of the series, in authenticity.
Oh, sure.
Whereas Xavier is completely whoever the hell he is at all times. Like that is not an act he's putting on. He's not like like that's just Xavier. Like people just want to turn the camera on him because he's like people naturally find him funny and charming. And so, yeah, I think I would agree if it were more the other way, but he's just out there being himself, man. I don't think he's out there reading too deep into stuff because you make yourself crazy that way. Let's be honest.
You think Panthers fans, especially like Panthers fans that are from up this way, right, where you're more often paying attention to the ACC than the SEC, maybe you didn't know much about XL in college, do you think the first glimpse we got of what he was as a character was with the fan at training camp last year brought him the handmade leather cowboy hat with the Panthers logo on one side and the Gamecocks logo on the other, and there's video of him not understanding why he couldn't wear that out on the field? Like, is that maybe the first glimpse we all got of like, we've got a guy?
The first thing I remember is not long after he was drafted because someone put up a video of him talking. And
Sure.
I was like, what? I was literally like, I'm from here, like as in the South. And I got like every other word at best of that. I'm going to need to rewind it and, turn up the volume. And that was my first sort of taste of that. But I see what you're saying.
Do we believe XL's personality inspired Ted McMillan's pose in his rookie photo? That sort of Vogue win over the crowd shot.
I don't remember what generation they're in right now. What generation are those dudes in?
Are they alphas? Yeah, alphas, right?
Oh, maybe. But either way, I think that might just be like a generation. Like sometimes those guys do stuff that I'm like, huh. Like that's not a thing I'm used to seeing football players do in a serious way.
Yeah.
Like
I hear you.
It's just or basketball players or whatever. Like there are just sometimes things those guys do that I've started to be like, don't really get it, but okay, not for me to understand.
Yeah, those guys really are more apt to embrace the work bitch mentality of the month of June that we are in right now. Happy Pride, everybody.
Yes, exactly. Happy Pride. But think about how like fashion conscious those guys are. Like
sure.
Think about what we just saw at the both drafts. Like or what we see at the draft, like those guys work. Like, okay, it matters to them what they are wearing, how they look. They do not mind touches of what would typically be considered feminine.
Think about all of look, this was a thing with Caleb Williams in the pro level. It was a thing with Ryan Williams at Alabama at the college level. How many guys are painting their nails now?
Exactly. Yeah. McCain from Duke, the basketball player, like,
right.
He was,
his TikTok dance videos. Yeah.
Now he's got an endorsement. Like, come on, man. Like these guys do not care as much. I think collectively, obviously there's some bad influences that sometimes leak in, but they do not care collectively about like what the traditional notion of masculinity means. Like for them, they're just like, this team's cool. I look good in this. I'm going to wear it. I don't really care.
It's a good reminder that the guys that hold on to, oh, my coach would have beat my ass and blah, 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 or my coach did it, blah, blah, blah. Dude, football culture is not as strong as whatever the culture is at the moment, right?
100%. Yes, that is so accurate. And I think like, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think progressively as generations go, like people, they grow up to care less what people think about them necessarily. Right. Like it's certainly what older people think about them. I think like they like think about all the things our parents like hammered into us of like, oh, that looks stupid. Or like people are going to think you're whatever. If you have tattoos or piercings, you won't get hired for any jobs. And that's just not a thing people say anymore. Yeah. It's not, no one cares anymore. So
and it goes the other way too, right? Like the tunnel walks for the WNBA have been a fashion show for a long time. Yeah. And do you remember the first time Caitlin Clark did it in like this leather halter top, there was this like reaction of like, what is going on here? And like by the next week, she was back to coming in t-shirt and she's like, yeah, I don't know. I was trying to fit in. I guess I don't have to.
I love that though. I love the way this because like isn't that something we all kind of want to do on a regular, like I know anytime I wear something that's even like remotely outside of my normal fashions, people will be like, whoa, look at you, you're wearing, and I'm like, I just wanted to try something different. Like I just wanted to try, like it's almost like wearing a costume, it's
why fun. I don't wear my leather halter top often, but I keep it in my closet just in case.
Well, I have like some tall punk boots with like spikes
Sure,
on them and stuff.
sure.
And so I like to wear them occasionally. And when I do, people will be like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just wearing shoes that I think look cool."
Is that because of the shoes, or is that because we know you as very small?
Well, maybe some of, or you know me as like someone who makes pretty boring fashion choices, which fair.